This is your host, Donna Torno, Director, Panama Canal Zone Veterans, giving you, the injured, a voice in the sea of damaged lives by the VA's cornucopia of lies and deceit. We all know now that dioxin was present in the Canal Zone, and we intend to have our voices heard. Our first guest on the show is Becky. Becky has similar situation as myself. She was a wife of a soldier stationed in Panama and has presumptive diseases, her and her husband both, and both have been denied. Becky, hi, how are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you for asking. How are you, Donna?
I'm doing pretty well, Becky. I am so excited to have you on the show tonight. I want everyone to give me a call and participate on our show. So I'm really excited to hear and share your story. Now, Becky, what year were you and your family in Panama?
Well, my husband went in Panama March the 15th of 1968, and I went in January of 69. when I was going to go down to be with him, there was some rioting going on, so they canceled my flight, and I had to stay home until the rioting got over.
Wow, rioting?
Yes.
And that was in 68?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that was before we got there. That must have been scary.
It was really scary. It was demonstrations and civil unrest over May 1968, the presidential elections, and it was resulting in October the 11th, 1968, the military junta removing the new elected president, Aris. I think I said that wrong. I don't know. And cabinet from the office, and it was really bad. They were shooting up everything that had American or United States on it. And when I did go down finally, we were going to live in Cologne. And the first day I was there, the next day I had to go into the military company and take courses on how to get out of Cologne in case we had another uprising.
Oh my goodness.
But I had a very bad experience going down. I was only 18 years old, and at that time, there was a whole lot of airlines being hijacked. And there were 2 planes hijacked going to Panama that day, but it wasn't mine. But my mother was so worried.
That day?
And yes, it was terrible. And so I was all by myself, and there was this guy on the plane that just scared me to death. He was a foreigner, and he just stared at me and never took his eyes off of me while we were on the plane. And so when we stopped at Mexico City, there was this man that sat behind me, and he tapped me on the shoulder, and he says, "I think you better get off the plane and not sit on the plane because that guy is really watching you." So here I go getting off the plane. He gets off and follows me.
Oh no.
So that just made it worse. So you had to go through customs and all this, and I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go back and get on the plane. So I did. He followed me. And he sat there and stared at me the whole time. So I was just kind of petrified. You know, I was only 18. And so when I got to the airport in Panama, I got off the plane and went in, and my husband wasn't there.
Oh no.
I went to the telephone to call my mom. You can't call out, not in Panama.
Oh, that's right.
And everybody spoke Spanish except me, and I was walking through the airport, and I finally found this guy that could speak English. He says, "I'll take you in my office, and we'll call and see what's going on." So we were going through these double doors, and there come my husband, and I said, "Where have you been?"
I bet you were happy to see him.
He said, well, this other couple was bringing him to the airport, and he was speeding and got a speeding ticket.
Mm.
So that's how I started my Panama life.
So you landed on the Pacific side, and then you were living on the Atlantic side. So did you have to take the train then that day?
No, No, they drove. They brought it. They had their car, and they drove over to pick me up.
Oh, okay. That was so interesting. Was that during the daytime?
No, it was night.
It was night.
And my husband, he warned me. He said, "Now, when we drive into Cologne, don't be surprised because you'll see everything. You'll see people without clothes on, laying on park benches, and all this, you know." And so it was very interesting. Uh,
Yes.
but it was really like a third world company, you know, world company, but
Yeah, third world country.
country, I mean,
Yeah,
yes.
right. Well, we felt like it was a third world country too because, there were no cell phones in those days and we didn't have telephones either that we could call back home or if you were out and about, you couldn't, if you got broke down in your car, I remember we did a few times and there's no phones to call anywhere to get any help. It's an
I know.
interesting
I was
place.
there several days before I could call my mom, before I found out you had to go downtown Cologne to call out, you
Oh,
know. So finally someone took me down there and I called Mom, but she was so worried, bless her heart.
if you ever got there. Oh.
It was really an experience, but I loved my time there. Um, we rented from a landlord, and her name was Yaya, and she had this big house, and she lived on one side, and we lived on the other with two other couples. And we knew the other two couples because they were military. But when they started going home, she would just rent to anybody that was looking for a place. They didn't have to be military. They could be Panamanians, you know. And we did fine until she moved two Panamanian girls in. They were single. They were wild. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
And I mean, it was nothing for them to sit around with hardly anything on when our husbands come home.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's when I started looking for quarters in the canal zone. Someone had told us that the people that work on the canal or work over there as teachers or whatever, that they go back to the States for vacation, and when they go, they rent their quarters to the military families if they, you know, approve of you. And so our first set of quarters was in Gatun, and we rented from Cop Fingers, and they were awesome people, and their house was just so nice, and it was really, we had a washer and dryer there. When we lived at downtown Cologne, I did my wash in a tub on a washboard.
In the 60s.
And you wouldn't believe, but I had to do sheets that way too.
Oh boy.
But it was a good lesson learned.
Yes, it was. Now, while you were down there, did you ever see any spraying going on?
Oh yeah, I did. Of course, we lived in Gatun, and I could remember the trucks coming down the street, you know, during the day or the evenings. And I can remember those little kids running behind it. Like they thought it was water.
Right, right. I saw pictures of those, and we saw kids doing that in the States too, because we really didn't think that those sprays would kill or hurt people. We knew they hurt bugs, but we were told, oh, it doesn't harm people. So how is your living down there? Has that affected your husband's health?
Oh yes, he's got lots of health problems. He uh, he has diabetes, and he has neuropathy, and he has high blood pressure, and he has rosacea, and he has an acne form of lesions and a typical dermatitis. He has other things, and I have COPD, and I never smoked, and you know, I don't know where I got it at, but I've had it for several years.
And has Joe filed for benefits? And if
Oh,
so, what happened and how did the VA treat him?
well, the VA where he goes for medical, we have a good VA, but now for filing benefits, we have not gotten anywhere. Every time we file, we've been denied.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
he filed the first time, see, in 2006, and they made a decision and they gave him 10% on his ears, on one ear, one his right side, I believe it was. And that was from shooting his gun. They said that he lost a little hearing or something in that.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
they denied everything else. And so in February of 2007, they did the Agent Orange exam on him, and they added him to the registry. And they have several things in that. You know, they said he had the scaling of the skins and stuff, but nothing was ever done. They just threw that to the side too. And so in August of 2007, he filed a notice of disagreement with the Department of Veterans Affairs, and his decision was made, and it was denied.
Mm.
In 2008, he testified at a travel board before a veterans law judge, and that was in June in 2008. In December of 2008, the veteran has not been shown to have, they said the veteran has not been shown to be exposed to herbicides,
Mm.
to include Agent Orange during his service in Panama.
Mm.
Really? Well, we all know it was there, you know, and you've proved it in your book, Donna, but
Yes.
they still said he was not. So in January of 2009, we filed a notice of disagreement, and the direct service connection was denied it. In 2016, he filed again, and he was denied again. Um, Joe said he was tired of fighting, and I ran, and he wasn't going to file anymore. And then I ran into you, and you said, Becky, keep filing, keep it open.
Yes, please keep it open. Boy,
and
Becky.
so, and
Uh,
so last year, you know, that's when we filed, and then when I ran into you, you said to keep it open, but I think it's already closed. I'm not sure, but we've been fighting since 2006.
Boy, Becky, my heart goes out to you and Joe. I've talked to thousands of people just like us that have been trying for decades to get the VA and DOD to acknowledge that herbicides were in fact used in Panama, Agent Orange, even Agent Purple I found in Panama. But I
Oh,
know
really?
exactly what you're going through with your health issues. Your issues are similar to my own, and but I haven't been fighting for benefits for as long as you have. I sure wish I would have seen all this a long time ago. But I'm glad you're fired up now because it's so wrong for the VA and the DOD not to have recognized long ago the fact that Agent Orange or the dioxin TCDD found in Agent Orange and Agent Purple was indeed in Panama. I mean, it's right there on the shipping list. You've seen them. You've read my book. And, you know, I went back, you know, when my husband was denied, I went back to see, well, I found it in 74 to 77 when we were there. Let me see if it was ever there any earlier than that. And I found it in January of 1959. And I thought, wow, that's really odd. And
That's a long time ago.
that is a long time ago. So not only people that served during the Vietnam era, or, you know, there could be other people that could have been exposed much earlier. I know
Well, you
half,
know,
go ahead.
I read, excuse me, I read somewhere that Agent Orange and Agent Purple was in Panama before it was ever in Vietnam. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. You know, I uncovered one of my references in my book. It's called the BWCW something report. It's a biological warfare and chemical warfare. And in there, you know, you can't search the document. You can open it up and it looks like it's searchable, but you cannot search it because I searched for words that I could actually see in the document and they don't pop up. So I read the whole thing. It's about 500 pages, and in there it says that the War Department began testing over 1,000 chemicals in 1943 in what was then the Panama Canal Zone.
Wow.
A lot of people don't know, but before the EPA came about, it was the War Department, along with the USDA, the DOI, Department of Interior, and the HEW, the Health and Education and Welfare Department, that, you know, as soon as pesticides came out, they say, hey, use this, it works great, a little bit works fine, and a lot works a lot better. In fact, one
Well,
of the,
I heard that you could buy the Agent Orange off the shelf back then. And
you actually could. The USDA actually wrote a handbook, and that's also one of the references in my book, The Travels of Orange, that in 1962, they wrote a book on how to use phenoxy herbicides correctly, which 2,4,5-T is a phenoxy herbicide. And they're the experts on how to use it, and they used it, I guess, everywhere. And it was off the shelf for the military because it was one of the references in my book is I think it's TM 529, which is a technical manual for the Army, but the Air Force and the Navy had different names for that same document. But it was a cropland handbook for pesticides to use on different kinds of pests and plants. And it was right in there. And the Armed Forces Board, they said that anything that's in there, it was up to the base commander. And we all know how many pests and
Right.
weeds were in Panama.
Well, in your book, I read your book, and I think it's awesome, and you've done a great job, Donna. And everybody owes you a lot for all the information that you've come up for us. And in your book, it said something about the drinking source in Panama Canal Zone was contaminated with 2,4-D, arsenics, and other pesticides since 1948. That's a long time.
That's right. I was really surprised when I uncovered that document. You know, it's not like they put it in our drinking water to contaminate us, I'm sure, but
But we
but
all drank that water and swam in that water.
we sure did. We used it for everything, and you know, they were using arsenics and to kill the weeds in that grow under the water, and so this plant called the hydrilla was taking over the Gatun Lake, and Gatun Lake was made, you know, for the purpose of resupplying the water for use in the canal for the ships going through, and so this plant was getting in the way of the water being able to rotate back and forth, and so they needed something really stronger than the arsenics they were already using, which is arsenics are really bad for us in our drinking water as well. They were using lead arsenics and copper.
It's a wonder we're alive, huh?
It is wonder that we're alive. But you know, the interesting thing is all these pesticides can affect people much differently. And in my book, I explained that one of the entomologists, Rachel Carson, wrote a book on silence called Silent Spring. And she explained it pretty good, you know, that we have this protector in our system. I think it's called chloranterese. And I'm not a medical person. I don't, you know, I'm not good at explaining this, but my book does a pretty good job at it. And so when we're subjected to a toxin or a pesticide, if you know our liver is already been subjected to several of them, it builds up in our system, and then also this chloranterese isn't there, and all these pesticides that they use. She explains it good in her book because it's a chapter called Elixirs of Death, and all of
Hmm.
those pesticides that she lists there were all used in the canal zone. And so
Wow.
we were subjected to many. And so as you're subjected to them and it builds up in your system, it just depends on, you know, like your husband was out, he was a policeman, right?
Right, he was.
So he was
He
out
was
on the,
out on he was out at Fort Sherman Gate. He was standing on the gate one night and he said there was an odor that was real strong. He did not see him spray, but he said it was really, really strong, and he was there for about 2 hours and he got really sick. And so he had to call his supervisor to come get him, and they took him to the dispensary at Fort Gulick, and that was before I got down there. And he was in 3 days with 105 fever, and they never found out what was wrong with him.
wow, that's really interesting. Um, you know, I had something similar when I was at Fort Davis. I had all of a sudden a um, high fever, about 105, and it was about a week it seemed like, and my face swelled up sideways. I mean, I looked like maybe the Elephant
Wow.
Man. And I worked right across the street. If you know where the PX was at Fort Davis, so right across the parade field by the barracks there was
Yes. Uh-huh.
two quarters, like white quarters on the road there, and that was our quarters. So, and I worked right across the street, but I couldn't even get there because I was so ill. And I wasn't throwing up or anything, it was just a high fever, and I couldn't get, you know, I couldn't do anything. But I went to the dentist 3 times, and I finally said, you know, they said nothing was wrong with me. They couldn't find anything wrong with me as well. But I think it was V because in my research, there's something called Venezuela equine encephalitis, and that was made at Fort Gulick, and there were several soldiers at Fort Sherman that were exposed to that in the 70s, and you know, I think I might have gotten that as well. But I recovered, I think.
Well, I hope you have.
Well,
You're here anyway.
all these weird things that I have the neuropathy also and the COPD also, not smoked, and asthma and different things. But I worked in buildings with asbestos in those days.
Well, you know, one thing that really shocked me when I got down there was we didn't have windows. We just had screens on every place we lived. We lived in Cologne and Gatun and Cocosolo and at Fort Gulick, and none of them had windows. We just had screens. And tell me the sand fleas were terrible. They just come through those little screens, and I'd tell Joe, I'd say, boy, I'm getting ate up by something. But I says, I can't see them. You couldn't see them.
No, you could not see them at all. We had a lot of calamine lotion on those little bites. What would you use on those bites? I mean, that and absorbing junior, everything we could find that might take
You
that
know, I
itch
don't
away.
really remember what we used, but they were awful.
They were awful. They were everywhere.
But I couldn't get past not having windows. I was scared to death when I first got there. Until we got into the Canal Zone, I was scared.
You didn't have windows in Cologne either?
No. Did
Oh,
you?
yeah, I think we did have windows in Cologne. We actually had air conditioning in Cologne.
No, we didn't have air conditioning either.
Yeah, we didn't have it in the
We,
quarters on base.
no, we never had windows. Never, never. It was a good experience.
It,
My
it,
kids couldn't do it.
did you have children while you were down there, Becky?
No, I did not.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I read in the Veterans Appeal that someone won, and it said that they had 55-gallon drums were shipped to Panama in '68. Do you know if that's true? I guess it is. It was in his appeal.
I have read that as well, and apparently, you know, that was used in that particular case, so it must have been accepted, and so I think that that might be real, and I don't doubt it. I don't think I have 1968 shipping records, but I have a lot of shipping records from 1959 to 1977, and it was shipped down there every single month according to these records, so I don't doubt it.
So how long does this stay in the ground once it's sprayed? Is it just a couple of years or?
Well, that's an interesting question. You know, while I was waiting for my husband's denial, I met a Dr. Dornchuk, Wayne Dornchuk. He is the guy, him and a guy named Hatfield that went to Vietnam and set up shop there and proved its existence in Vietnam. And I asked him to check out my evidence and write an opinion about my case. And so he did. And in his opinion, he referenced a fella, and I put that in my book as well. I think the name is Pasternak. At any rate, he says that it stays in the soil for 100 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
This sure is. So therefore, you know, anybody that was there anytime from 59 at least. Now, back to Gatun Lake, you know, we were talking about 2,4-D in Gatun Lake. I only found the shipping record back to 59 for Agent Orange, and actually an Agent Orange expert told me that's Agent Purple just because of the year. So the 2,4-D that was put in Gatun Lake in 1948 is half of Agent Orange. And it's since been found out that 2,4-D is also carcinogenic. And we know that was put in Gatun Lake, our drinking water, from 1948. So for the
Wow.
VA and the DOD to deny benefits to your husband and my husband and say that there were no dioxin there, no herbicides used in Panama is incorrect.
Well, you've proved it, so we just got to get the VA to believe it, huh?
That's right. That's right. So I think if everyone spreads the word and gets involved as a group, and thank goodness that Sean Raven, the attorney, you know, when I met him, he had some evidence and I had some evidence, and we got together and got talking, and I showed him my research, and he said, well, we're going to go take this national and try to help all these people.
That's awesome. I have contacted him, but I haven't heard. Well, I heard back that he'll get back with me soon, so
Okay, I
I
know he will.
can't wait to get hold. Can't wait to hear from him.
I bet. I know you're anxious. I know I was anxious when I got my husband's denial, and I thought, what in the heck am I going to do now? And so when I met him, and he actually believed me, because I've talked to other attorneys and they didn't think it was a winning case. Sean Raven thinks it's a winning case. So
Well,
I'm
my husband's been denied so many times. He said, just forget it. Then when I got on our website that we have and I met you, it just got me all excited. And he says, well, keep on fighting. So
yeah,
I'm fighting on. He
that's
gets
right.
tickled at me. I said, oh, I'm going to get on with Donna tonight. And he said, you are? And I said, yes. And he says, well, tell her thanks for all she's doing.
Thank you. Tell her your husband that I sure hope that he wins, and I hope my husband wins, and then maybe it'll be our turn, Becky. Civilians like you and I have no recourse right now, but we hope to change that.
Yes. And I also read that Agent Orange is stored in our body fat, and it may not show up for years. When we first filed, they said, why are you filing? It's been so many years. Why didn't you file this when you first got home? And I said, well, he didn't have the symptoms then. And that was, they were all against that. But the last time we filed, we took some things that people had posted, evidence of it being over there, and we took it into the VA guy, and he said that he wrote it all down and stuff, and we said, now you need to get his medical records update and stuff. They just sent they sent the old information they had, and it didn't take them very long, and they sent back and said, there's been no change, you're denied.
You know, I think that uh, their their reasoning, which is incorrect, saying there has been no change, is because the missing link is they believe it was not ever there. And we've proven it was, and we're going to fight to make them recognize this.
Well, somewhere along in several years ago, I heard the reason that they won't say it was there because they don't want to pay us, because they don't want the people to know that it was there, was because they're going to have to pay billions of dollars for the cleanup in Panama.
As they should.
Yes, they should.
That land, apparently, from pictures I see posted, a lot of those beautiful quarters that we lived in that we thought were really nice are completely contaminated and no one can live in them and the jungle's just taken over.
It's awful. I've seen pictures too. They're terrible. Coco Solo is just really bad. But I just don't know why they didn't keep up the housing, because the housing was nice.
I think that I, from treaties I read, and the sprayers, the people that actually did the spraying were the Renair people. They were the local Panamanians that were hired by the Canal company. And, under the auspices of the War Department, and the USDA was there to help them to understand, which sprays to use on what pests and whatnot. And so I don't know for a fact, but I think that they probably know the ground, they must know that the ground, or they must feel that the ground is contaminated and they're not going to use it for anything, because why would they not use that land? That was thousands of acres.
Oh, yes. Well, I saw, it's been a couple of years ago, somebody posted some pictures of Coca Solo, and they said they didn't have running water, and it was just awful. I mean, the people that was living there then was awful. And they said that if you go there to visit, to reminisce where we lived, not to go to Cocosolo, it's off limits. It's really a bad place to go. But they say Cologne's bad now too. So,
You know, my daughter, she just went there last in 2015, and she wanted to go see where we used to live. And so she wanted to go to the Atlantic side, and they told her it's too dangerous.
that's what I hear.
Hmm.
But I'd still love to go back sometime.
I would too. It was a beautiful place, and the people were really nice. The food was wonderful. All the craftsmen that made the leather goods. It was fun to shop on Front Street in
I
Cologne.
loved all the sandblast Indian stuff too. I liked the molos and all that.
I have molas on my living room wall right now.
Uh, my Sunday school teacher, her husband was a missionary that went to Panama, and they went out in the fields, where they had nothing. And she brought back a beautiful, beautiful blouse. It was white, but it was made out of mola, and it looked like a mola. It was beautiful.
Nice. They did some beautiful handiwork.
Yes, they did.
And I love the beaches. I mean, going to the beach and finding a shell with the animal still in it. The beaches were just unspoiled. We used to go up to on the Pacific side, north of Panama City, and camp out on the beach with just a hammock
Uh-huh.
because it was so nice and warm.
We went to Toboga Island. Did you go there?
Yes, we did. We did go to
There's
Tobago.
not much there, but we went.
Yeah, but there's a lot of contamination off. I think they buried a lot in the waters around there from,
Oh, that's wonderful.
yeah. I remember we were snorkeling and we were like, you know how it seems so shallow because it's so clear and all those pretty fish, and we were snorkeling and not paying attention to how far off the land we were. And I saw this big fish with these teeth, and came up and asked my husband, "What was that?" And he said, "It was a barracuda."
Oh, no.
I popped up and I looked at the land, was like a mile away. I'm like, "Oh my goodness." I had to swim as
Well,
fast as I could.
there was a lot of nice things in Panama when we lived there. When I first got there, I joined the Newcomer Club,
Uh-huh.
and we went to a lot of places. We got to tour the President's Palace,
Oh,
and we got to go inside, and it really was pretty. Did you ever get to go?
no, that's something I
Well, when
skipped.
there was gates in the front, and they opened up the gates. And of course, they had their guards, and they let us go in. And it was all open all the way up, and there were ducks running around with a little pond thing there. And then they took us into the president's palace and took us into different rooms and stuff. And I'll never forget the day we were there, the Prime Minister of England was there.
Wow.
And they were in session, and they let us look in this little window, and he was signing some documents and stuff on this table. We got to see that. But that's one of the highlights of getting to go to the President's Palace. That was really cool.
That was cool. Was that on the Pacific side, I imagine, right?
Yes, it was. Uh-huh.
Right, right.
But then we also, they had the zoo over on our side, the Atlantic side, and Fort San Lorenzo. We went there, and we
Mhm.
went to a lot of places.
I was so disappointed at Fort San Lorenzo because you couldn't like picnic with all those giant ants.
Oh yes, the ants were bad. The ants were bad.
They they could make paths so fast and they carried those giant leaves. I mean, they were like 2 inches long.
I remember living out at Cocosolo, and we had a parking garage. You could park underneath and then go up the stairs. And I can remember going out in the garage to go somewhere, and then we had the biggest land crabs. Do you remember those stupid land crabs?
Oh, yeah. They took over
I'd
the
see one
streets.
and run.
That's so funny. Those land crabs. Yeah, I remember they would come alive and the whole street would be wiggling because there'd be so many of them, hundreds of them
Yes, there would
marching
be.
down the street. Yeah, it was a strange place, and the beauty, of the plants and the flowers growing on the trees, and Just really pretty.
It was beautiful. Yes, it was.
I could have done
Well,
without the snakes.
well, I can remember going, I don't know, Fort Greely, Fort Davis, or somewhere, and some of the military guys would have those. Is it boa constrictors? Is that the ones that just squeeze you?
Right.
They'd have them. They'd have them on the gates, playing with them, wrapping them around them and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I couldn't stand that. No, I don't think my husband did it, but there were some that did.
Yes, yes, I saw that. And, when we first moved into quarters on base at Fort Davis, I came up to our little patch of grass that we had in front of our quarters, and there was something really pretty on the grass, and I bent down, and I'm like, oh, that's so pretty. I thought it was someone's scarf or something, and my husband said, that's a coral snake.
Oh no, you didn't pick it up, did you?
No, right before I touched it, he told me that, and I knew that that was not a good thing to touch. But
No, it wasn't.
it was dead, so it probably got some of that Agent Orange on my lawn or something.
Oh no. Well, Donna, have you ever thought about going on TV talking about all this?
Oh my goodness, it may come to that someday. I'm not really looking to be famous. I just want to get it to the right place. And right now we have, an attorney that can practice in DC, and our case, my husband's case and your husband's case will be up there with the VA, and so they know they just have to come clean. If they don't come clean, then I need to, we need to get it out there. And so if somebody knows someone who wants to put me in contact with a TV personality, I would be happy to talk to anybody, but I'm not really looking for that kind of attention.
Well, yeah, I understand. Well, I think you've done a wonderful job, and I personally appreciate all you've done and that you're still doing, and you've done so much research for all of us, and it's just really, really appreciated.
Well, I'm really, really happy. It really warms my heart. I love helping people. I guess that's just always been my way. And it was so strange that it was like a little angel was sitting on my shoulder to, click here, because I found so much evidence, as you saw in my book, with the congressional hearing that says that this is the same stuff they used in Vietnam. So it's the same stuff that was shipped to Panama. And with Dr. Dworenchuk's opinion that I was, right on my research, and I just knew that this information, a lot of people that I talked to on our Facebook page, they were getting so down that, this wasn't ever going to be proved. And I really do think that we're going to be able to prove this, and they're either going to have to address it one way or the other, because Dr. Dworenchuk said that anywhere where 2,4,5-T is present, the dioxin TCDD is present, and that's really the culprit that is the poison that's the most poisonous thing known to man that was present, and they was using it routinely in the canal zone, and it lasts 100 years in the soil, and it moves around with all the water and stuff, but we were all connected to all the streams and lakes and things, so we, we very well could have been exposed, was his
Right.
opinion.
Well, Donna, why don't you tell them about the book that you've written? I have read it, and I love it, and I've got so much highlighted in it. And if I would suggest, if you don't have the book, you should buy the book and read it. It's got lots of good information in it.
Well, thanks a lot, Becky. I sure will. It's called The Travels of Orange. It's available on Amazon, both by ebook, if you prefer, or a paperback. It's not very much, $10 or $15 for the paperback.
I don't think anybody would regret getting the book. I don't read a lot, but when I got that book, I read it 2 days.
You
two
know,
days, and I don't read.
it's interesting that you say that. I wanted to make it, there's so much information. I mean, I have thousands and thousands of documents, but I wanted to make it interesting and short enough that it just takes people right through what happened from the War Department to the USDA, the Rainier people, all the different professors and different universities that were down there, the Smithsonian, the Army, the military, and exactly, all the evidence, when the Aberdeen people came down in 76 and actually tested for Agent Orange. Well, as you can see, I could talk for hours about